Picture this, a gorgeous wife, a marriage that felt like something out of a dream. We were always in sync, loving, supportive, like we were playing for the same team every single day. Life felt good. It was steady, predictable in the best way. Safe. What could possibly ruin that? Then, one totally average evening, I'm helping my wife unload groceries from her car. Nothing unusual, just grabbing bags, making conversation. One bag slips under a seat, so I bend down to retrieve it. But instead of a tomato or some bread, my fingers graze something strange. Something that doesn't belong. Curious, I fish it out. For a second, I just stare, my brain racing to make sense of it. That's when I spot something else that tightens the knot in my gut. Julia had never once given me a reason to question her, not even a flicker of doubt in all our years together. But there I was, standing in our garage, holding two things that screamed louder than words. My instincts were ringing alarm bells my heart didn't want to hear. I know what you're probably thinking. I should have just asked her then and there, called her out, demanded to know what was going on. But I didn't. Not yet. Because right in that moment, something shifted inside me. A switch flipped. I knew exactly what I had to do. I came up with a plan, instantly, one that would make her feel, one day, what it felt like to have someone vanish. Disappear without a single trace. But hang on, let's not jump ahead. Let me take you back to the beginning. Back to how all of this even started. I met Julia 6 years ago at a barbecue one of our mutual friends threw out in Raleigh. She was breathtaking. The kind of woman who turns heads without trying. She had these chestnut brown waves, sparkling green eyes, and this infectious laugh that could make you forget what you were even saying. But it wasn't just her looks. Julia had substance. She was sharp, driven, witty, one of those rare people you feel lucky just to talk to. So imagine my surprise when she actually wanted to date me. I'm Ryan, 35. I work as a freelance software developer. Most days I'm at home coding, but every now and then I travel for work, tech conferences, mostly. Cities like Charleston, Knoxville, or Richmond. Nothing too wild. Julia, on the other hand, worked in corporate sales at a medical tech firm right in downtown Raleigh. She used to say she loved it. And we clicked from day one. It wasn't just sparks, it was like everything lined up. 8 months later, I proposed. A year after that, we were married. Those first few years? Nearly perfect. We bought a cozy little townhouse in Chapel Hill, not too far from Raleigh for her job, but tucked away enough for some peace and quiet. I had my projects, she was climbing the ladder at work. But no matter how busy we got, we always made time for each other. Sunday hikes in the Flatirons. Movie nights curled up in bed. Spontaneous road trips to Utah or Arizona. It felt like we were building something solid. Something real. But then, things started to shift. And not in some big, dramatic way. That's the part that messed with my head. It was subtle. So subtle, it was hard to tell when the cracks even started forming. Maybe it was about a year ago. That's when her work hours started stretching later. First, it was just a late meeting once a week. Then it was twice. Then she'd stroll in around 9:30 or 9:35, saying she had dinner with a client or a networking event she couldn't skip. She also started traveling more. Orlando, Savannah, Tampa. Always work-related. Always with some airtight explanation. And I didn't question it. But then came the arguments. Not shouting matches or slamming doors, Julia wasn't like that. It was quieter. Sharper. Like she'd get irritated over stuff that never used to bother her. I remember suggesting we take a weekend trip to Breckenridge. Just us. Her reaction? Ryan, do you even think about my schedule? I have a trip next week, I can't just drop everything. Or the time I asked if she was okay because she seemed distant. She snapped, God, you're always overthinking. Not everything is about you. She started pulling away bit by bit. At first, I chalked it up to work pressure. She wanted a promotion. I figured she'd come back to herself once things settled down. But weeks turned into months. And the distance just kept growing. Now, I've never been the jealous type. Not once. But sometimes you just feel it. You catch the shift in someone's energy. It's in the way they suddenly avoid eye contact when telling you where they've been. Or how they flinch when their phone buzzes. Julia used to be open with her phone. She'd sit beside me on the couch, scrolling through Instagram, laughing at memes, showing me silly dog pics her coworkers sent. Then, gradually, she started keeping it face down. She'd get a text, glance at it, smirk, then quickly tilt the screen away like it was nothing. Little things started stacking up. Like how she bought new lingerie but never wore it for me. Or the expensive outfits I never actually saw her wear. How she suddenly changed her perfume after 5 years of using the same one. And sometimes when she thought I wasn't watching, I'd catch her sitting on the couch, staring at her phone with a soft, almost dreamy smile. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. that I had no real proof. Just a string of weird vibes and off behaviors. Until that one night. The night everything started to unravel. It was a Friday, a little after 6:10 p.m. when I heard her car roll into the garage. That familiar hum of her red Mazda CX-5 was my cue to wrap up some emails in the home office. I glanced at the clock, she was late. Again. I shook it off and went out to help her like I always did. She was pulling her purse and phone from the front seat. Same calm look as always, maybe a little tired. Just a woman winding down after a long week at work. "Hey babe," she said with a smile, reaching for the back seat. "Can you grab the rest?" "Sure thing." The trunk was loaded, paper bags lined up neatly. Usual stuff. Vegetables. A rotisserie chicken. A bottle of white wine. Nothing suspicious. I started unloading, balancing the bags on my arms when one tipped and spilled. "Ah, damn it," I muttered, bending down to reach for a rolling orange. My fingers slid under the seat and hit something stiff. A small plastic card. Even before I pulled it out, I had a sinking feeling in my gut. I grabbed the orange and the card in one smooth motion, trying to keep it casual. It was a hotel key. Plain white. No name, no logo. Just a magnetic black strip across the back. Completely anonymous. I turned it over in my hand, my stomach churning. Julia doesn't travel for work. She never has. Her office is less than 30 minutes away, right there in Raleigh. So why the hell would she have a hotel key hidden under her seat? Before I even had time to fully process what I was holding, something else caught my eye. It tucked into the side pocket of the car door. It looked like trash at first, just a crumpled up piece of paper that had clearly been stepped on, flattened, and half torn. But curiosity got the best of me. I picked it up, smoothed it out as best I could. It was a parking receipt. No business name, no hotel branding, just a faded timestamp and a partial address that had been ripped clean off. That was it. A random stub and a key card. But even with so little to go on, they felt like puzzle pieces that didn't belong in our picture-perfect life. I just stood there for a few seconds, frozen, holding those two things like they were evidence in some crime scene I wasn't supposed to see. I could hear Julia humming inside, her footsteps light as she unloaded groceries in the kitchen. The garage door slowly shut behind me with a quiet thud, locking me in with nothing but my thoughts. I knew what this looked like. I just didn't want to believe it. Still, I forced myself to stay calm. Took a breath. Then carefully placed both the key card and the receipt right back where I found them, not because I wanted to pretend it didn't happen, but because I knew this wasn't enough. If I brought it up now, she'd probably laugh, roll her eyes, call me paranoid. And maybe, just maybe, I'd believe her. So instead, I chose silence. I picked up the last two bags and walked inside like nothing had happened. She was already in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine, scrolling on her phone like any other Friday evening. "Everything okay?" she asked, glancing up with a soft smile. I nodded. "Yeah, just thinking about dinner." She walked over, kissed my cheek, and said, "I was thinking we could keep it simple, just the chicken and roasted veggies." I'm wiped. I studied her face for a second, searching for anything, any sign of guilt, hesitation, nervousness. But she looked exactly like the Julia I knew. The same woman I'd built my life with. I nodded again and started helping her unpack, though my brain was spinning 100 miles an hour. Later that night, while she showered, I sat on the couch staring at the muted TV, lost in thought. The key card. The parking stub. I could still feel them in my hands like they'd left an imprint on my skin. I picked up my phone and typed into Google how to trace a hotel key card. Nothing helpful. Turns out most hotels stopped putting room numbers on their cards for security reasons. There was no way to trace where it came from without swiping it at the front desk of every hotel in Chapel Hill or Raleigh. That wasn't realistic. I rubbed my hands together, frustrated. There had to be something. The receipt had a timestamp that meant she parked somewhere with a paid garage. But with no business name or address, it was just another dead end. I clenched my fists. This wasn't proof. Not yet. But I wasn't giving up. Over the next 2 weeks, I became an observer, quiet, careful. Watching not just what she said, but everything in between. The small stuff. And the small stuff spoke volumes. She started coming home even later than before. First, it was once a week. Then twice. Now, she was out at least 3 nights a week for work events. She stopped asking me to join. I used to hear, "You should meet my coworkers sometime." Yeah? If I even hinted at going, she'd wave it off. "It's boring networking stuff," she'd say with a shrug. "You'd hate it." Then there was her phone. Julia was never obsessed with her phone until now. Suddenly, it never left her side. If I so much as reached for it to check the time, she'd snatch it away with a casual, "work stuff." Always smiling. But I noticed the way her thumb moved quickly, deleting messages like she was trying to keep something hidden. I wasn't stupid. By this point, I knew something wasn't right. But knowing it deep down and having proof to back it up, those are two very different things. I needed to see it. With my own eyes. That's when the idea hit me late one night, sitting alone in my office, staring at that blank hotel key card in my memory. I had no way to trace it. The parking receipt? Just as useless. So I thought, what if I tracked her? My first thought was to use a phone app. But she was way too protective of her phone now. If she found out I was tracking it, she'd just shut it off. Cover her tracks even more. So I went with something she'd never expect. I ordered a small GPS beacon online. The kind used for fleet vehicles and personal security. Compact, battery-powered, easy to hide. Once it arrived, I waited for the right moment. One afternoon, while she was upstairs getting ready for work, I stepped into the garage. Told her I was grabbing something from my truck. Instead, I knelt beside her Mazda CX-5, reached under the driver's seat, and pressed the tracker into place with industrial-strength adhesive. Took me less than 30 seconds. She never suspected a thing. The next few days I watched. Every time she said she was working late, I checked the GPS. And sure enough, some nights, she wasn't anywhere near downtown Raleigh. Then Friday rolled around. I had planned something special. A home-cooked dinner, nice bottle of wine, something to remind us of what we used to be. Some small piece of me still wanted to believe we could fix this. At 5:45 p.m., she walked through the front door wearing a dark blue dress I'd never seen before. Her hair curled, her makeup flawless. I smiled, motioning to the table where I'd set up grilled salmon, roasted veggies, and a bottle of chilled Sauvignon Blanc. She barely even looked at it. "Oh, babe, I forgot to tell you," she said, barely glancing up from her phone. "I've got a work dinner tonight. Last-minute thing with some potential clients." I stood there, my chest tightening. "You just got home." She sighed like I was overreacting. "I know. I wasn't expecting it either, but my boss asked me to go. It's important." I nodded slowly. I'd heard this script before. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her coat, and left. I didn't stop her. I just waited until the garage door closed. Then I grabbed my phone, opened the GPS app, and watched the red dot move through Chapel Hill. She merged onto Highway 36 heading toward Raleigh. I sat in my truck, heart pounding. If she was meeting clients, I expected her to stop at one of the usual fancy restaurants, Shanahan's, Capitol Grill, those upscale spots downtown where execs usually do business. But the dot stopped somewhere else. A place that made my stomach twist. A lounge. On Franklin Avenue. The moment I saw the name, my stomach sank. It wasn't a restaurant. It wasn't some work event. It was a high-end cocktail bar. One of those sleek, dimly lit places where nobody's really there to talk about business. I took a slow breath, started up my truck, and pulled out of the driveway. I had no idea what I was going to do once I got there. I just knew I had to see it, whatever it was, with my own eyes. By the time I made it to Franklin Avenue, the city was buzzing with weekend energy. Cars packed the streets, laughter echoed off the sidewalks, and neon signs shimmered on rain-slick pavement. I found a spot down the block, parked, and just sat there. Through the bar's wide front window, I could see everything, the warm glow of Edison bulbs hanging low over polished tables, candles flickering gently, and a sea of well-dressed professionals sipping overpriced cocktails like nothing in the world could touch them. And then I saw her. Julia was tucked into a corner booth, drink in hand, head tilted back laughing at something the guy next to her said. I'd never seen him before, tall, sharp suit, confident. He leaned in close, too close. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched. She leaned toward him and he touched her hand. She didn't pull away. She smiled that smile. The one she used to give me when we first met. I felt my grip tighten around the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. This wasn't some innocent drink with coworkers. I could see it in every little movement, the way she twirled her finger along the rim of her glass, the way she angled her body toward him, hanging on every damn word. But I didn't drive off. Something in my gut told me this night was far from over. They stayed in that booth for almost 2 hours. Then at exactly 9:20 p.m., I saw Julia stand up, grab her coat, and walk out the front door with him. I ducked down slightly, my heart pounding. They walked to the valet stand. A sleek black BMW M4 pulled up. I clenched my jaw. She said something to him, I couldn't hear what. But then she smiled, casually walked to the passenger side, and got in without hesitation. No pause. No second thoughts. I turned my key in the ignition and followed. They didn't go far. Less than 10 minutes later, the BMW pulled into the valet entrance of a boutique hotel near Riverside Square. My heart dropped to my stomach. This was it. There was no talking my way out of this. No room left for doubt or denial. I pulled into a spot across the street and shut off the engine. Watched as he handed the keys to the valet, then walked around to open Julia's door like some kind of gentleman. She stepped out. He placed his hand on the small of her back. She didn't stop him. Together, they strolled through the hotel's glass doors, swallowed by the lobby's soft golden light. I just sat there frozen. Numb. It was real. All of it. Weeks of second-guessing myself, of wondering if I was just being paranoid. They were gone in a flash. The truth was right in front of me, and there was no unseeing it. She had lied. She had betrayed me. And as I stared at the place where they disappeared, one thought echoed through my head like a drumbeat. She has no idea what's coming. I stayed in that truck for what felt like hours, though it was probably 10, maybe 15 minutes. Just enough time to watch the valet park the BMW and for the lobby lights to swallow the woman I thought I knew. Funny thing is, I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel like flipping out or punching something. I just felt cold. Like a switch inside me had been flipped off. Whatever was there before, love, trust, hope, it went dark. I didn't follow them inside. I didn't need to. I already had all the answers I'd been avoiding. I couldn't bring myself to drive home. That place didn't feel like mine anymore. Not after what I'd just seen. So I drove. No destination. Just miles of city lights, the dark silhouette of downtown, the neon haze of bars, and the quiet residential streets that now felt like strangers to me. My mind spun in circles. What the hell was I supposed to do next? Before I knew it, I had pulled into some rundown gas station on the edge of town, the fluorescent lights casting a pale glow over the brick walls of a tired-looking convenience store. I reached for my phone. My fingers moved before I could think, scrolling through old contacts. And then I saw his name. Marcus. We hadn't spoken in a while. But we'd been close since college, over 15 years. One of those friends you don't need to talk to every day, but when things fall apart, he's still your guy. He picked up on the third ring. Ryan? Damn, man, it's been a minute. What's up? His voice was so familiar it almost broke me. You free tonight? I asked, barely recognizing the sound of my own voice. He paused, then said, yeah. You okay? Not really. Another pause, then meet me at Mulligan's. Mulligan's. The old dive bar in Chapel Hill we used to hit back in the day. Dim lights, low ceilings, classic rock on the jukebox. The kind of place where you could sit, drink, and not be bothered. When I got there, the place was mostly empty. A couple guys at the bar, an older couple playing pool in the back. I slid into a booth near the window and ordered a whiskey neat. Marcus showed up 5 minutes later. Same guy, a broad-shouldered, dark hair streaked with gray at the temples, jeans, and a flannel shirt like always. He spotted me, nodded, and slid into the seat across from me. All right, man, he said, signaling for a beer. Talk to me. So I did. I told him everything. The hotel key card. The receipt. The GPS tracker. Watching Julia walk into a hotel with another man. Seeing her smile at him the way she used to smile at me. By the time I was done, Marcus was leaning back against the booth, arms crossed, his beer still untouched. Jesus, Ryan? I stared down at my whiskey glass, running my thumb along the rim, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do, man. He exhaled, rubbed his jaw. You thinking about confronting her? I shrugged. What's the point? She'll just lie. Say I'm overthinking. Twist it around like she always does, make me feel like I'm the crazy one. He nodded slowly, his expression tight. You staying at the house tonight? I thought about it. Going back to that place, our place, knowing she'd be walking through the door in a few hours like nothing ever happened? The thought made me sick. I don't think I can, I said quietly. Marcus studied me, then took a slow sip of his beer. What he said next caught me off guard. Look, man, you need space. I looked up. I've got that country house, he added. Place has been sitting empty for months. Why don't you go stay there for a bit? Clear your head. Figure out your next move. I knew the one he was talking about, his cabin up near Asheville. Tucked away in the mountains, surrounded by nothing but tall pines and silence. He'd bought it a few years back as a weekend escape, but he barely had time to use it. I don't know, I muttered, swirling the last of my whiskey in the glass. Just think about it, he said. No pressure. But if you don't want to go home tonight, you don't have to. The idea started to settle in. For so long, I'd been obsessed with what Julia was doing, what she was hiding. I hadn't even stopped to consider what I was going to do. What if I just left? Not forever. Just long enough to breathe. We sat there in silence, the jukebox humming something old in the background, a low murmur of voices filling the bar. I threw back the last of my drink, felt it burn its way down my chest, then finally nodded. All right, I said. I'll take you up on that. Marcus didn't look surprised. Just gave me a solid nod. Good. Finish your drink. I'll grab the keys from the truck. And just like that, something shifted. For the first time since this mess started, I felt like I had control. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I was going to disappear and she wouldn't even see it coming. When I walked into the house later that night, I made sure everything looked normal. Kitchen was dark except for the soft glow from the microwave clock. Her perfume still lingered in the air, but she wasn't home yet. I stood in the quiet, letting it all sink in. This place used to be my home. Our home. Now it just felt like a stage where I'd been playing a role in a life that wasn't real anymore. But it wouldn't be mine for much longer. I took a deep breath, pushed the emotion down, and started mapping out my exit. I couldn't just throw things in a bag and vanish, not yet. That'd raise red flags. Julia would notice. She'd ask questions. So I moved slow. The next morning, I played my part. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, just like always, as she got ready for work. She was scrolling through her phone, nibbling on toast. Big day today? I asked, keeping my tone light. She nodded, distracted. Meetings? Busy week? She didn't even glance at me. Perfect. That day, after she left, I got to work. I started small, just the things she wouldn't notice. A few shirts. My laptop. My important documents. Each day, I moved more. Books from the office. My old leather jacket. A few tools from the garage. Trip by trip, I drove them up to Marcus's cabin in Asheville. A quiet two-bedroom tucked into the trees. Isolated enough that she'd never come looking, but still close enough that I could tie up loose ends if I had to. By the end of day 3, I'd moved everything that mattered except the furniture and stuff I didn't care about. Julia never noticed. Or maybe she just didn't want to. Friday morning, she was up earlier than usual, standing in front of the mirror, doing her hair. "You're up early," I said from the doorway, keeping my voice steady. She glanced at me in the mirror. "I've got a flight to Tampa this afternoon." I leaned against the frame, hiding the way my pulse picked up. "Work trip?" "Yeah. Just for the weekend," she replied, grabbing her suitcase. "Should be back Monday evening." I nodded slowly. "Safe travels," I said, turning away before she could read anything on my face. As soon as she left for the airport, I got to work. No panic. No rush. I had this planned down to the last detail. I packed the rest of my clothes, cleared out my closet, loaded up my truck. The only thing I left behind was my wedding ring sitting right in the middle of the kitchen table and a folded piece of paper beside it. 5 words. I hope it was worth it. No angry rant. No questions. Just the truth. Cold, clean, and final. I stood in the center of the kitchen one last time. The same kitchen where we used to cook together. Laugh. Dream about the future. It didn't feel like mine anymore. I walked out, got into my truck, and didn't look back. As soon as I hit the highway, I turned off my phone. No notifications. No calls. No texts. I knew what was coming. At first, nothing. She wouldn't realize I was gone until she got home Sunday night. She'd expect to find me on the couch, maybe throwing together dinner. But instead, she'd find the note. Tuesday morning, I turned my phone back on. 18 missed calls. 31 text messages. She could cry, scream, beg, I didn't care anymore. I was gone. The first message had come at 6:58 p.m. on Sunday. "Ryan, where are you?" I was sitting on the porch at Marcus's cabin, watching the sun dip behind the trees, a cold beer sweating in my hand. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later. "Ryan. Seriously. Call me now." A missed call. Then another. I ignored them all. By 7:45, the texts turned frantic. "What is this? Where are your things? This isn't funny. Ryan, come home. Did something happen? Are you okay?" Then came the angry ones. "Did you seriously just leave without saying a word? What the hell is wrong with you? I don't know what you think you saw, but you're being ridiculous." There it was. I took another sip of beer, letting her words hang in the silence like smoke in the air. I wasn't playing along. I wasn't taking the bait. She could deny it all she wanted, twist it however she liked. But I had seen her. I watched her walk into the hotel with another man. There was nothing left to explain. The messages didn't stop. Monday rolled into Tuesday and still they came. "Ryan, please. We need to talk. I swear on everything, there's nothing going on. Just tell me where you are. I'm scared. I don't understand." Tuesday came with another message. "I miss you. I don't even know what you think happened, but I swear it's not what it looks like. Maybe come home? Please. Wednesday? I can't do this, Ryan. I need to see you. I know you're reading these. Just talk to me." By Thursday, the cracks finally showed. "Fine. Be a coward. If you're just going to ignore me, maybe I made a mistake marrying you in the first place. I let out a dry, humorless laugh when I read that one. There it was, the shift. The moment when sweet apologies turned sour. When guilt didn't work, she went straight for anger. And when that didn't break through either, she started to unravel. It took 11 days. 11 straight days of silence on my end before she finally sent the message I'd been waiting on. I'm sorry. That was it. Short. Blunt. Way less than I expected. But it was enough. I stared at the screen for a long while before opening it. Then came another. I messed up, Ryan. I did. But I swear I never wanted to hurt you. And another. It wasn't serious. I don't even know what I was thinking. I got caught up in something and I made a mistake. A mistake. That's what she called it. Months of lies. Sneaking around. Betraying every promise we ever made, and she just summed it up with that one word. Mistake. And you know what? I didn't feel anything reading that. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Not even shock. Just relief. Because now it was confirmed. Right from her own mouth. No more mental gymnastics, no more second guessing. There was no fixing it. And I sure as hell wasn't going back. By the end of week 2, the messages slowed down, not because she'd given up, but because she'd changed tactics. Now it wasn't apologies. It was excuses. I was lonely. You were always traveling. We were drifting and I didn't know how to fix it. None of it mattered. I was already gone, mentally, emotionally, physically. There was nothing left in me to reach for her. And then finally she made her move. She got a lawyer. About a month after I'd left, a formal letter showed up at Marcus's cabin. Neat envelope. Legal tone. Just like her, controlled, polished, calculated. Julia had filed for divorce. Uncontested. No demands. No fight. Just, over. She probably thought it would make me react. Force me to reach out. Start a conversation. It didn't. I sat down, read through the paperwork in 5 minutes, signed where I needed to, and mailed it back without a second thought. That was the last time I ever heard her voice. When the divorce was finalized, I was sitting at a little cafe in Asheville, sipping coffee and watching the clouds drift lazily over the mountains. My phone buzzed with one final message. I guess this is it. I'll always love you, Ryan. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I deleted it. Just like that, Julia was gone. Life moved on. It's been nearly 4 years since I walked out of that house and never looked back. 4 years since I left my wedding ring on the kitchen table with a folded note and drove off into the mountains without saying a word. Since then, I've rebuilt. Marcus's cabin up in Asheville became home for a while. The quiet helped me reset, helped me remember who I was without her. Eventually, I moved down into Chapel Hill. Found a small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I got back into hiking. Started helping Marcus with projects when he needed a hand, contracting, repairs, builds. Something about working with my hands again made me feel grounded. I still did software work, but I called the shots now. No more endless business trips. No more late nights killing myself for deadlines that didn't matter. And yeah, I started dating again. Nothing serious. Nothing fast. Just honest connection. Good people. Good moments. No pressure. Life was calm. Peaceful. And then out of nowhere, there she was. It was a warm afternoon in Chapel Hill, early summer. I had stopped by my regular spot, Hilltop Grounds, just off Pearl Street, for an iced coffee and some time on the patio. The place was busy, as usual. Students hunched over laptops, tourists snapping selfies, remote workers typing away like their lives depended on it. I stood in line, scrolling my phone, waiting to order. And then I heard a voice I hadn't heard in 4 years. Ryan? I froze. It wasn't like hearing a ghost. Ghosts don't carry weight in their voice. Ghosts don't hit you in the chest like a steel beam to the ribs. I turned. There she was. Julia. She looked different. Not tired, not broken. Just stripped down. Like the version of her I used to know had been peeled away layer by layer. Her hair was a little shorter. Barely any makeup. And there was something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Hesitation. I didn't say anything at first. Just let the silence hang in the air between us. She shifted on her feet, swallowed hard. I wasn't sure if it was really you. Eventually, I found my voice. It's me. We ended up sitting at one of the patio tables outside. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know how the hell she found me and, more importantly, why. You're probably wondering how I tracked you down, she said, fidgeting with her straw. It crossed my mind. She gave a dry, hollow laugh. I ran into Monica a few weeks ago. Monica, an old mutual friend. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years. She mentioned seeing you around Chapel Hill, Julia went on. I didn't push for details. But once I knew you were here, I had to find you. I looked at her. Why? And that's when I saw it. The weight. The regret. Sitting square on her shoulders. She took a breath. Because I needed to tell you the truth. And for the first time in a long time, she did. She told me everything. After I left, everything fell apart. She tried to pretend she was okay. Tried to keep moving like nothing had happened. But life came crashing down fast. The guy she threw everything away for? He turned out to be exactly what I thought, a fraud. A manipulator. A man with a fiancé of his own who blamed it all on her when things blew up. I lost my job, Ryan, she said with a bitter laugh. Word got around. The whole office knew. Staying wasn't an option. I had to resign. She had fallen hard and there was no one there to catch her. You were right, she said softly, staring down at her cup. About everything. I didn't respond. What was there to say? She made her choices. Now she was living with them. I've thought about you every single day, she said, voice cracking just a little. I know I don't deserve your time. But I had to see you. I had to tell you what happened. I stayed silent. Ryan. I know I can't undo the past. I know I hurt you in ways I probably don't even understand, she whispered. But if there's even the slightest chance that we could try again. I let out a slow, steady breath. There it was, the thing I'd known was coming the second I heard her voice in that cafe. She wanted another shot. A second chance. But here's the thing, some stories can't be rewritten. Some damage goes too deep. And I wasn't about to go back to someone who didn't choose me the first time. I took a long sip of my coffee, set the cup down gently, and finally spoke. No. That one word hit harder than I expected. Julia's face changed in an instant, hope flickered and then fell away, replaced by something raw and exposed. Ryan, please, she said, leaning in. I know how this must sound, how I must look. But I swear I'm not the same person I was back then. If I could go back, if I could undo it all. But you can't, I said, cutting her off. My voice was calm. Unshaken. And I don't want you to. Her eyes widened like she didn't quite understand what I meant. I don't want the version of you that never made those mistakes, I said, leaning back in my chair. Because that version of you? She never existed. I gestured lightly at the space between us, the table, the two coffees, the weight of years that now sat like fog between us. You made your choices, Julia. And I made mine. And this, I motioned around us, the silence, the mess of old memories and fresh regret, this isn't going to happen. She sat frozen, fingers clenched around her cup like it was the only thing anchoring her in that moment. But I still love you, she whispered. I didn't feel hate. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't even feel sorry for her. What I felt was clarity. Peace. I said. That was the end. But Julia didn't let go so easily. After that day at the cafe, the messages started coming in. First, long, emotional emails. I just want to talk again. I miss you more than I can say. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But if we could just meet again, maybe we could figure it out. When I didn't reply, her tone changed. I got a job in Portland. Maybe a fresh start in a new place could work for us. Would you consider moving, leaving everything behind? I stared at those emails, shaking my head. She still didn't get it. She thought if we ran far enough, started fresh, we could just erase the past. But running doesn't change who you are. And Julia had already shown me exactly who she was. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I blocked her email, deleted everything. And just like that, she was gone again. Months passed. Seasons changed. And Julia slowly faded into the past. Just another thing I left behind, right where it belonged. I kept moving forward, kept working, kept hiking, kept living the kind of life I should have been living from the beginning. One night, I found myself standing outside, looking out over the mountain ridge behind my house. The air was cool, crisp. The sky was clear, the stars endless. And for the first time in years, I felt free. No lies, no regrets, no ghosts, just me, standing on my own 2 feet, living my own damn life. And that was more than enough. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think I should have gathered proof of the affair and filed first, leaving Julia with nothing? Or did I do the right thing by just walking away and never looking back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more.